Tupac Amaru Shakur grew up within a family shaped by activism, with close bonds to his mother, Afeni, and a creative circle that guided early ambitions in poetry, theater, and music. Early moves between East Coast cities connected Shakur to performing arts programs and to mentors who encouraged disciplined craft. Professional relationships with Digital Underground opened his recording path, then production and label alliances supported solo work as Profile, and expectations rose. Shakur's recordings blended social commentary with narrative detail, influencing debates on policing, inequality, and community life. Albums and films expanded his presence beyond music, while media and legal disputes highlighted the tension between public image and private circumstance. His catalog became central to conversations about regional dynamics and artistic responsibility, and collaborations tied him to a wide network of artists and producers across scenes. Shakur was shot in Las Vegas in September of 1996, and he died days later in a local hospital. The killing generated extensive investigation and public scrutiny, with legal developments continuing over time. The absence of a conclusive shared account in early years contributed to enduring public attention and documentary interest, which shaped later reporting and scholarship. There is no public grave for Shakur. Accounts describe ashes reportedly scattered in private settings, and family memorial observances have remained the preferred mode of remembrance. The lack of a permanent public burial site has directed commemoration toward murals, museums, archival exhibits, and performance tributes, often organized by collaborators and cultural institutions. A brief reflection is historically useful. The extraordinary visibility of Shakur's recordings and film rolls contrasts with the privacy of his memorial arrangements. Public memory has settled around community murals and curated exhibits, while family choices and the absence of a gravesite underline a separation between broad cultural legacy and private commemoration. Christopher Wallace grew up in Brooklyn, with strong ties to his mother, Valletta Wallace, and to neighborhood peers who shaped his early craft. Local crews, producers, and the Bad Boy Records circle formed the core of his professional relationships. Sean Combs, studio engineers, and radio personalities supported a rapid transition from local tapes to national releases, which positioned Wallace within a tightly connected New York network. Wallace's recordings emphasized narrative technique, cadence control, and a polished sound that influenced mainstream radio. His debut and subsequent singles framed the East Coast resurgence, while collaborations and remixes broadened reach into R&B audiences. Public disputes, media framing, and regional rivalry amplified scrutiny of lyrics and industry strategies, yet Wallace's chart success and storytelling remained central to discussions of craft and influence. Wallace was shot in Los Angeles in March of 1997, and he died shortly afterward at a hospital. The killing drew wide public attention, with investigations and litigation extending across years. Memorial events in New York featured large crowds, and peers highlighted his role in restoring confidence to local scenes. Wallace is buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. The interment followed funeral services that included a New York procession and a private ceremony for family and close associates. The cemetery setting situates his memorial within a formal landscape that hosts many figures from entertainment history. A brief reflection clarifies legacy and setting. Wallace's lyrical precision and radio presence shaped the East Coast sound, while burial in California marks the bi-coastal reach of his career. Public memory gathers around Brooklyn murals and industry tributes, alongside a gravesite located far from his earliest stages. Eric Wright's relationships formed in Compton among family, neighborhood friends, and emerging partners who later built Ruthless Records. Wright worked closely with Jerry Heller on business operations and with group members who became central to NWA. The label's producer network, engineers, and local promoters supported rapid scaling, linking street-level stories to a national audience. These ties, combined with distribution partners, positioned Wright as a pivotal organizer as well as a performer. Wright's public contributions included founding Ruthless Records, assembling NWA, and catalyzing regional narratives that reshaped national discourse. The music's explicit depictions prompted radio restrictions and public debate, while legal disputes over contracts and royalties tested alliances within the roster. Wright's approach to independent ownership influenced later strategies for artist-controlled labels, and his business posture showed how local scenes could negotiate leverage with distributors. In February of 1995, Wright announced a diagnosis of AIDS. He died in March of that year in Los Angeles. The disclosure altered public conversations about the illness, placing a well-known figure at the center of health messaging and advocacy during a period of widespread misinformation. Tributes emphasized Wright's role as an entrepreneur and catalyst for West Coast music. Wright is buried at Rose Hills Memorial Park in Whittier, California. Funeral services drew artists, executives, and local community members, reflecting both industry stature and neighborhood origins. The gravesite became a point of pilgrimage for fans tracing the geography of West Coast hip-hop history through cemeteries and commemorative sites. A brief reflection connects business innovation to remembrance. Wright's insistence on independent structures shaped label development and artist autonomy, while a traditional burial at Rose Hills offers a stable location for commemoration within Southern California's cultural map. Jason Mizell's life centered on Queens, with family, childhood friends, and neighborhood musicians forming the base of his relationships. As the DJ for Run DMC, Mizell's partnerships with Joseph Simmons and Daryl McDaniels shaped the group's sound and stage presence. Studio engineers, tour staff, and label colleagues rounded out a professional community that extended from local venues to international circuits. His recording studio in Jamaica, Queens, served as a hub for mentoring younger artists and maintaining local ties. Mizell's public contributions included pioneering turntable work in a group that bridged rap and rock audiences, which expanded mainstream exposure for the genre. Run DMC became a cornerstone of early national touring, video rotation, and brand partnerships. Beyond performance, Mizell supported community programs and offered guidance to developing talent. Industry coverage noted his steadiness in live settings and his role in structuring the group's on-stage dynamics. Mizell was killed in his Queens recording studio in October of 2002. The case involved extended investigation, federal charges, and subsequent court proceedings that unfolded over many years. Vigils and community gatherings in Queens marked the immediate response, while peers emphasized his reliability as a collaborator and mentor. Mizell is buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. The site places his memorial within a cemetery known for entertainment figures, and visits by fans and colleagues acknowledge his foundational role. Memorial services connected Queens neighborhoods to a broader industry circle, underscoring how a local studio anchored a national legacy. A brief reflection is instructive. Mizell's steady presence in a landmark group and his investment in local mentorship are remembered alongside the formal setting at Ferncliff. The burial site, separate from the Queens blocks that define daily work, offers a dedicated and enduring place for commemoration. Earl Simmons grew up in Yonkers, where family relationships, childhood friendships, and early mentors shaped his connection to local music programs and performance circuits. Collaborations with producers and the Rough Riders Collective established a close working network that joined management, DJs, and street teams. Partnerships with label executives and film directors later expanded opportunities beyond regional stages, while strong ties to Yonkers neighborhoods remained constant. Simmons's recordings arrived with striking frequency and commercial impact, placing consecutive albums at the forefront of mainstream charts. Live performances emphasized crowd engagement and call and response structure, while film roles widened his audience. Public coverage often centered on legal issues and periods of incarceration, yet discussions of craft highlighted vocal, timbre, confessional themes, and the collective brand built with Rough Riders writers, videographers, and producers. Simmons experienced a health crisis in April of 2021. He died days later at White Plains Hospital, and public gatherings formed quickly in the New York area. A large procession featured motorcycles, Rough Riders imagery, and memorial music, which reinforced the connection between recordings and community ritual. Simmons is buried at Oakland Cemetery in Yonkers, New York. Family members, collaborators, and residents marked the interment with local tributes and visits, placing the memorial within the city that shaped his earliest years. The gravesite has become a focal point for remembrance tied to neighborhood identity and collective history. A brief reflection clarifies setting and legacy. Simmons's national profile and film visibility contrast with a burial that centers Yonkers, affirming the local networks that supported his earliest work and sustained tributes after death. Russell Jones grew up in Brooklyn within a close family and an extended circle that included cousins and future collaborators. Early relationships with Robert Diggs and Gary Grice formed the foundation of the Wu-Tang Network, tying Jones to a collective that valued distinctive voices and disciplined studio routines. Managers, producers, and label staff connected his improvisational energy to structured releases, allowing a freewheeling persona to coexist with coordinated production. Jones's public contributions centered on an unmistakable vocal style, ad-lib choices, and comic timing that broadened the group's range. Solo recordings and high-profile appearances highlighted spontaneity, while media attention often focused on legal issues and interruptions to touring. Within the collective, Jones provided a counterpoint that underscored Wu-Tang's diversity, and collaborations with R&B performers expanded reach across radio formats. Jones died in Brooklyn in November of 2004 after a sudden medical emergency at a studio. The loss prompted tributes from group members and peers, with gatherings that emphasized family ties and the collective's long-standing bonds. Obituaries and documentaries placed his work within the larger story of 90s hip-hop and independent label strategies. Jones's remains were placed in a columbarium at the Christian Cultural Center in Brooklyn. Memorial services occurred within church settings and community spaces, with fans visiting to pay respects in a manner consistent with congregational guidelines. The placement offered a structured environment for remembrance in the borough that defined his upbringing and creative identity. A brief reflection is instructive. Jones's public image emphasized unpredictability, yet the columbarium setting demonstrates an orderly and communal approach to memorial care. The contrast highlights how a collaborative network and family decisions shaped remembrance in a stable, accessible place. Ermias Asghedam's relationships were rooted in South Los Angeles, with close family ties and partnerships that linked home life to neighborhood entrepreneurship. Collaborations with producers, engineers, and business partners supported independent releases and retail ventures, notably a clothing store that doubled as a community hub. Mentors in the local technology and real estate scenes advised projects that aimed to connect education, employment, and creative work. Asghedam's public contributions included a sustained independent catalog, strategic mixtape marketing, and investment in local corridors. The Marathon brand embodied a long-term approach to ownership and reinvestment, while collaborations bridged West Coast networks and national audiences. Media coverage highlighted both civic engagement and music milestones, and city leaders recognized efforts to foster local opportunities through business and philanthropy. Asghedam was shot in Los Angeles in March of 2019 outside his business location, and he died shortly afterward at a nearby hospital. The killing prompted large public gatherings, a citywide procession, and statements from officials and peers. Court proceedings unfolded over time, with extensive reporting on the investigation and trial. Asghedam is buried at Forest Lawn, Hollywood Hills, in Los Angeles, California. Funeral services included a memorial at a downtown arena, followed by a lengthy procession that passed through significant neighborhood sites. The gravesite, within a cemetery known for entertainment figures, anchors remembrance in the city that shaped his work and investments. A brief reflection clarifies the connection between place and legacy. Asghedam's model of local ownership and civic partnership continues through community programs and business initiatives, while burial in Los Angeles situates memory close to the corridors he sought to strengthen. Dwight Myers maintained close relationships with family in Mount Vernon and with peers who formed Heavy D and the Boys. Professional ties connected Myers to Andre Harrell and Uptown Records, where executives, producers, and choreographers supported development across studio releases and television appearances. Collaborators in New York radio and video production amplified a public image that balanced showmanship with approachability. Myers' contributions included a run of radio-friendly records that integrated dance-oriented production with clear, rhythmic delivery. He worked as a label executive and mentor, helping shape careers at Uptown during a pivotal era for R&B and hip-hop crossover. Appearances on television and film extended visibility, and collaborations across genres demonstrated how rap performance could adapt to broader entertainment formats without losing rhythmic identity. Myers died in Los Angeles in November of 2011 after a medical emergency. Tributes from artists and executives emphasized leadership, professionalism, and sustained mentorship. Memorial services brought together colleagues from recording studios, television sets, and executive suites, reflecting the breadth of his work across the industry. Myers is buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. The interment placed his memorial within a cemetery that holds many entertainment figures, and visits by fans and collaborators marked ongoing appreciation. Graveside remembrances and industry acknowledgments underscore how a career built on collaboration and guidance continues to resonate. A brief reflection is useful. Myers bridged studio craft, executive stewardship, and performance with consistent balance, and a formal burial at Ferncliff provides a lasting, accessible site for remembrance within the New York region that sustained his earliest work. Albert Johnson's life and work were closely tied to Queensbridge, with family connections and a creative partnership with Kejuan Muchita, known as Havoc. Managers, local DJs, and producers formed a support network that linked neighborhood schools, rehearsal spaces, and studio sessions. The duo's relationships with label staff, video directors, and touring crews sustained a rigorous schedule that kept Queensbridge at the center of their professional identity. Prodigy's public contributions with Mobb Deep shaped the sound of New York rap in the mid-1990s. Albums emphasized sparse, minor-key production and stark narratives, pairing Havoc's beats with Prodigy's measured delivery. Lyrics traced local realities without ornament, influencing peers and setting a template for later artists who sought a cold, documentary tone. Legal disputes, media scrutiny, and public disagreements appeared periodically, yet the catalog's consistency maintained critical regard. Johnson lived with sickle cell disease, a condition that influenced touring and studio routines. He died in June of 2017 while in Las Vegas during a performance run after a medical emergency related to his condition. Statements from family and collaborators emphasized resilience, discipline, and the challenges of managing health while maintaining professional commitments. Johnson is buried at Calvary Cemetery in Queens, New York. The gravesite places commemoration within the borough that framed his earliest stories and long-term collaborations. Fans and peers visit to acknowledge the role Queensbridge played in shaping a sound that recalibrated New York's approach to mood, tempo, and narrative clarity. A brief reflection is appropriate. Prodigy's steady voice and Havoc's production formed a durable aesthetic, and Burial in Queens aligns memory with the geography that informed the work. The site connects listeners to a neighborhood tradition that carried into national discourse. Malik Taylor grew up in Queens with close family connections and a long friendship with Kamal Farid, known as Q-Tip, that later anchored a tribe called Quest. Relationships with Ali Shaheed Muhammad, Jerobi White, and the Native Tongues Collective linked Taylor to a cooperative network of DJs, producers, and writers. Managers, radio personalities, and label teams supported a creative environment that valued collaboration, live instrumentation, and precise studio standards. Taylor's contributions included a nimble, conversational delivery that balanced Q-Tip's tone and expanded the group's dynamic range. Recordings emphasized jazz-sampled textures and everyday storytelling, shaping an accessible yet intricate sound that influenced artists across regions. Public appearances and tours demonstrated a disciplined stage presence, while solo work and guest features reinforced his identity beyond group settings. Media coverage noted humor, sports references, and a grounded voice that complemented the collective's broader aesthetic. Taylor managed long-term health challenges related to diabetes, which affected travel and performance schedules. He died in March of 2016, shortly before the group completed a final studio project. Tributes from peers and fans underscored his consistency, craft, and the resilience required to work through extended medical care. Taylor is buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. The placement situates remembrance within a cemetery that hosts many figures from music and film, giving fans a formal site for visits. Memorial gatherings, murals, and anniversary events in Queens continue to connect local neighborhoods to a catalog that shaped national conversations about style and tone. A brief reflection clarifies balance and setting. Taylor's steady presence grounded complex production choices, and Burial at Ferncliff offers a permanent point of recognition that complements ongoing community tributes in the borough that nurtured his earliest collaborations. Keith Elam's relationships connected Boston roots to New York's recording culture, with family support and early collegiate ties preceding a move into the city's hip-hop circuits. Partnership with Christopher Martin, known as DJ Premier, formed the core of Gang Starr, while managers, engineers, and a circle of touring musicians reinforced a disciplined studio and stage routine. Collaborations with jazz players expanded contacts beyond rap venues, linking clubs, festivals, and radio programs in both scenes. Elam's public contributions included a clear, deliberate vocal approach and a focus on moral and social commentary within tightly structured songs. Gang Starr releases established a lean, sample-driven aesthetic that emphasized rhythm and clarity, while the Jazzmatazz series formalized cross-genre dialogue with instrumentalists. Appearances on other artists' records, soundtrack placements, and international touring broadened the audience and influenced standards for lyrical restraint paired with precise production. Elam experienced a severe illness in early 2010, leading to hospitalization in New York. He died in April of that year, and public statements from family and collaborators guided memorial communications. Tributes highlighted craft, work ethic, and his role in shaping an understated, durable model for lyric and beat alignment across decades. Elam is buried at Ferncliff Cemetery in Hartsdale, New York. The interment placed his memorial among peers from film and music, and fans visit to connect recorded milestones with a stable site of remembrance. Commemorative events, archival reissues, and educational programs continue to frame his catalog as a reference for balance between message and musical economy. A brief reflection is useful. Elam's restrained delivery, paired with DJ Premier's architecture, defined a standard for clarity, and a formal resting place at Ferncliff provides a consistent setting for honoring a body of work built on precision and continuity. Chad Butler's relationships were anchored in Port Arthur, with family support and a creative partnership with Bernard Freeman, known as Bun B, that formed Underground Kings. Early ties to local producers, engineers, and DJs connected Butler to a regional circuit stretching from Houston to neighboring Gulf communities. Managers, promoters, and independent retailers helped move records through Southern networks, while collaborations with Texas artists reinforced a coherent scene defined by distinct tempo and texture. Butler's public contributions shaped Southern rap's national presence. As a producer and vocalist, he emphasized blues-inflected chords, deliberate pacing, and plain-spoken commentary on local economies and social life. UGK releases, guest verses, and features with artists across regions broadened reach without diluting regional identity. Media coverage often noted candor in interviews, as Butler argued for fair treatment of Southern artists and for recognition of independent distribution models that sustained local labels. Butler died in December of 2007 in Los Angeles. The death prompted tributes across Texas and beyond, with radio blocks, club memorials, and statements from peers underscoring his influence on style and business practice. Community mourning in Port Arthur and Houston reflected long-standing relationships formed through studio work and touring circuits. Butler is buried at Forest Park Lawndale Cemetery in Houston, Texas. The gravesite includes a marked headstone visited by fans who traced the geography of Texas rap through cemeteries, murals, and neighborhood landmarks. Memorial gatherings and anniversary observances continue at the site and in nearby venues. A brief reflection clarifies reach and setting. Butler's advocacy for Southern independence, paired with a distinctive production ear, guided a generation of artists. Burial in Houston positions remembrance inside the region he championed, aligning legacy with the local infrastructure he helped build. Jahseh Onfroy developed early relationships within Florida's online and local scenes, connecting with producers, videographers, and peers who shared files, beats, and distribution strategies. Family ties and friendships combined with a digital community that organized releases through platforms oriented to rapid feedback. Managers and engineers helped transition from informal uploads to studio projects, while collaborators in South Florida maintained an ecosystem of venues, home studios, and independent promoters. Onfroy's public contributions included a raw vocal approach that shifted from quiet confession to harsh distortion, reflecting a do-it-yourself ethos. Rapid releases and fan engagement built a following that treated social media as part of the creative process. Legal controversies and court cases drew sustained attention, and debates about responsibility and accountability paralleled discussions of musical range, from minimalist tracks to acoustic performances. Onfroy was shot in Deerfield Beach, Florida, in June of 2018, and he died shortly afterward. Law enforcement investigations and court proceedings advanced over subsequent years with extensive local and national coverage. Public gatherings formed at the location of the shooting and at memorial events, where peers and family addressed fans directly. Onfroy is entombed in a private mausoleum at the gardens of Boca Raton Memorial Park in Florida. The setting accommodates organized visits and formal memorials, including a public viewing held soon after death. The mausoleum has become a focal point for fans who travel to pay respects within cemetery guidelines. A brief reflection concerns visibility and structure. Onfroy's digitally centered career blurred boundaries between studio, audience, and daily life, while a permanent mausoleum fixes remembrance in a traditional setting, creating a stable site for memorial practices that developed online. Bashar Jackson's relationships formed in Canarsie, Brooklyn, with family support and close friendships that connected him to local producers, videographers, and DJs. Early ties to mentors in the Brooklyn drill scene, including collaborators who shared beats and studio time, established a network that linked neighborhood blocks to online platforms. Label staff and managers later coordinated releases, visuals, and touring plans that carried local energy to national attention. Jackson's public contributions centered on a gravel-tone delivery over sliding bass and syncopated drum patterns associated with drill. Breakout singles introduced a distinct cadence and ad-lib palette, while collaborations with New York and United Kingdom producers expanded the sound's reach. Media coverage tracked a rapid ascent, with fashion partnerships and coordinated videos reinforcing a cohesive visual identity tied to borough pride. Jackson was shot in Los Angeles in February of 2020 during a home invasion, and he died after being transported to a hospital. Investigations led to arrests and court proceedings, with updates covered widely across local and national outlets. Vigils in Brooklyn brought neighbors, peers, and community leaders together, linking remembrance to the streets where early work took shape. Jackson is buried at Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York. The funeral procession moved through local avenues, and the interment placed his memorial within a historic landscape visited by residents and fans. Cemetery officials adjusted access at times to protect the site, balancing public interest with preservation needs. A brief reflection clarifies the link between geography and legacy. Jackson's voice helped define a New York chapter of drill, and Burial within Brooklyn situates commemoration in the borough that shaped his sound, visuals, and early career structures. Malcolm McCormick's relationships were rooted in Pittsburgh, with family support and early friendships that fostered home studio experiments, local shows, and independent distribution. Collaborations with classmates, videographers, and regional producers built a network that connected school stages to online platforms. Managers and label partners later scaled operations, while close creative circles in Los Angeles and New York widened his peer community without severing ties to Pittsburgh. McCormick's public contributions included a steady run of independent releases, national touring, and a gradual shift from youthful party themes to reflective production and musicianship. Work under producer aliases, live instrumentation, and collaborations with jazz and soul players marked a deliberate evolution. Media coverage followed a transition from internet breakthrough to studio craft, highlighting improvements in arrangement, vocal tone, and mixing detail across projects. McCormick died in Los Angeles in September of 2018 following a substance-related incident at his home. Law enforcement investigations and subsequent prosecutions addressed the supply chain involved, and court records documented outcomes over the next several years. Public memorials and tribute concerts emphasized community impact, mentorship, and a studio culture that welcomed younger artists. McCormick is buried at Homewood Cemetery in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Fans visit a memorial site near a public park where community gatherings and annual remembrances occur, reflecting the city's ongoing role in shaping his identity. The gravesite anchors a geography of remembrance that includes recording spaces, murals, and youth arts programs. A brief reflection clarifies development and setting. McCormick's measured artistic growth, from independent teenager to careful arranger, pairs with a burial in Pittsburgh that keeps commemoration aligned with the city that nurtured first recordings and long-term community ties. Gregory Jacobs maintained close ties to family and to a Bay Area circle that included members of Digital Underground and younger artists he mentored. Partnerships with producers, engineers, and DJs supported a collaborative studio culture, while the Humpty Hump persona, managed alongside his given name, reflected careful coordination among managers and label teams. Friendships with touring musicians and visual artists reinforced a network that linked Oakland venues to national stages. Jacobs' public contributions included co-founding Digital Underground, introducing distinctive funk-driven production, and creating a playful alter ego that broadened performance range. He played a key role in early opportunities for emerging artists, offering studio guidance and guest placements that advanced careers. Production credits, keyboard work, and inventive arrangements positioned Jacobs as a bridge between Parliament funk lineage and West Coast hip-hop aesthetics. Jacobs died in April of 2021 in Tampa, Florida. Tributes from collaborators and younger artists emphasized mentorship, musicianship, and generosity in studio settings. Retrospectives highlighted his compositional sense, his approach to live instrumentation in rap contexts, and the enduring appeal of character-based performance within disciplined production. Jacobs is buried at Parkview Cemetery in Manteca, California. The interment places his memorial within Northern California, near communities central to his creative identity. Fans, peers, and local musicians visit the site, connecting graveside remembrance to a regional tradition of independent venues, studio collectives, and community workshops. A brief reflection clarifies continuity and setting. Jacobs balanced humor with technical craft, and burial in Northern California situates commemoration within the landscape that shaped Digital Underground sound and his mentorship of later generations. Richard Shaw's relationships were grounded in Houston, with family connections and creative ties to Brad Jordan and Willie Dennis that formed the core of the Ghetto Boys. Managers, producers, and engineers at Rap-A-Lot Records established a professional framework that linked studio sessions, tour schedules, and video shoots. Local radio figures, club promoters, and community leaders contributed to a regional network that sustained the group's visibility across decades. Shaw's public contributions included vivid storytelling, a distinctive voice, and performances that combined shock imagery with social commentary. The Ghetto Boys recordings pushed lyrical boundaries while addressing neighborhood realities, mental health, and urban politics. Media coverage often focused on controversies surrounding artwork and lyrics, but critical assessments recognized narrative craft and the group's role in expanding Southern rap's national profile. Shaw faced a serious illness in his final year, and he died in June of 2019 in Colorado. Statements from family, group members, and label representatives guided public information, while tributes in Houston underscored his significance to the city's cultural history. Retrospectives placed his work within a lineage of Southern independent labels and community-rooted studios. Shaw is buried at Forest Park Lawndale Cemetery in Houston, Texas. The gravesite provides a fixed point for local remembrance, with fans and peers visiting alongside community commemorations. Memorial gatherings and anniversary acknowledgments maintain a connection between the city's recording legacy and a physical site of respect. A brief reflection clarifies reach and setting. Shaw's career connected provocative performance to careful narrative framing, and Burial in Houston situates memory within the region that supported the Geto Boys' enduring influence. Kershnik-Kari Ball's closest relationships centered on family in the Atlanta area, especially with Quavius Marshall and Kiari Cephas, whose partnership formed Migos. Managers, engineers, and producers in the Quality Control Network supported an efficient studio routine that relied on shared writing sessions, ad-lib coordination, and rapid turnaround. Local DJs, videographers, and stylists helped shape a visual language that matched the group's rhythmic approach and fashion choices. Ball's public contributions emphasized precision within the triplet-based cadence associated with Migos, offering tightly structured verses that anchored group records. Features and collaborative tracks extended presence beyond group albums, while performances highlighted timing, clarity, and understated stage demeanor. The Atlanta scene's producers and mixers reinforced sonic coherence across releases, helping to define a widely imitated contemporary template. Ball was shot in Houston in November of 2022, and he died at the scene. Public memorials drew large crowds in Atlanta, with industry peers and local officials addressing the audience. Law enforcement investigations and court proceedings advanced over time, with sustained media coverage documenting developments. Ball is buried at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Atlanta, Georgia. The interment placed remembrance within the city that nurtured early recording sessions and the group's earliest shows. Fans visit the site while commemorations continue through murals, tribute performances, and charitable efforts linked to family and community partners. A brief reflection clarifies role and setting. Ball's measured delivery and consistent structure grounded a widely copied style, and Burial in Atlanta aligns commemoration with the family and civic networks that framed his career. Daniel DeMille's relationships connected family life to a dispersed creative network of DJs, producers, and independent label partners. Early work with his brother in the group KMD built ties to New York's underground, while later collaborations linked DeMille to scenes in London and across the United States. Managers, distributors, and vinyl specialists supported a catalog that favored small batch releases, alternate versions, and careful art direction. DeMille's public contributions included a masked persona that separated daily identity from performance, emphasizing voice, internal rhyme, and puzzle-like structure. Albums under multiple aliases coordinated producer partnerships and comic book-inspired framing without breaking narrative coherence. Guest verses, instrumental series, and collaborative projects with peers in independent rap created a reference library for writers, DJs, and collectors who valued dense lyricism and sampling craft. Family announced that DeMille died in October of 2020, with the news shared publicly at the end of that year. Statements emphasized privacy and requested respect for family boundaries. Tributes from artists across generations recognized a sustained influence on writing technique, beat selection, and the economics of independent release cycles. There is no public grave disclosed for DeMille. Burial details remain private, and fans have organized memorial murals, listening events, and archival exhibitions in cities associated with his work. The absence of a public site has shifted commemoration toward community spaces, record shops, and libraries that host discussions and curated displays. A brief reflection clarifies practice and remembrance. DeMille's deliberate anonymity guided presentation in life, and privacy in death continues that approach. Public memory now gathers around recordings, masks, and printed ephemera rather than a known gravesite, aligning legacy with a catalog built on careful authorship.